My son thought I wasn't coming for Christmas. "Don't come, Mom," he texted. "We already made other plans." So I took the house off his name. He didn't know the house wasn't his anymore. "Mama, you always bring the mood down. You show up and it's like the whole house forgets how to breathe. Just don't come this year. We've already made other plans." Seriously, you're like a rain cloud that parks itself over everything. This house needs fresh energy, not funeral vibes. Maybe it's time you checked out a retirement home that matches your frequency. That was the text message I got from my son, 4 days before Christmas. No phone call, no invitation. Just 3 back-to-back texts, sent while I was knitting a scarf in the little back room they call mine, which is really just a converted storage space with a twin cot, a cracked mirror, and a space heater that shuts off every time someone uses the microwave. My name is Margaret Ann Holloway. I live, or rather, I reside, in suburban Georgia, about an hour out from Atlanta. I am 71 years old. I have one son. His name is Jeremy. Jeremy was born when I was just 22. His father, Tom, died when I was 63, lung cancer. Tom was a kind man, but a quiet one. He worked with his hands and believed in keeping your promises, especially to your children. When he passed, Jeremy was already grown. I remember sitting across from him in the hospital waiting room after the funeral, watching him scroll through his phone, barely glancing up. That was the first time I felt invisible in his presence. It would not be the last. After Tom died, I went back to work, teaching part-time at the local elementary school and shelving books at the community library to make ends meet. I lived simply, couponing, sewing, baking from scratch. I made do with less so I could keep the house warm and the fridge full, and when Jeremy called one night at 2:13 a.m., crying about how his marriage was over, how he had nowhere to go, how he could not afford to live anywhere decent, I did not hesitate. I cashed out my retirement savings, $80,000, 0 cents in total, and told him to find a place we could share. We bought a modest 3-bedroom house together. Well, technically, I bought it. It was my money, and the deed was in my name. But I added him to the documents so he could qualify for the loan. That was my mistake. I wanted him to feel like it was ours, like he had some stake in rebuilding his life. That first Christmas in the new house, he made a promise. We were sitting on the floor, the living room still full of unpacked boxes, a tiny pre-lit tree leaning against the wall. I was holding a box of ornaments, the same ones I used to hang with him when he was a boy. He looked at me, his eyes red from too much bourbon, and said, "If I ever get my life together, you'll always have a room in my house, Mama. You'll be the first person I take care of." It was one of those moments you file away in your heart, like a photograph you do not want to fade. But memories, like photos, can yellow over time. And promises? Well, promises break easier than glass. 2 years passed. Jeremy met a new woman, Courtney. She was younger, sharp-tongued, always on her phone, always filming some new recipe or dance or cleaning hack. For her social media followers, she called herself a wellness coach and sold powders that cost more than my monthly electric bill. From the moment she moved in, things changed. She insisted I move into the back room, temporarily, while they redesigned the upstairs. That was 3 Christmases ago. She started saying things like, "Your mom gives off such heavy energy," and "She's got that hospice vibe, like she's always waiting for something sad to happen." One afternoon I overheard her say, "Babe, I think your mom might be aging the furniture just by sitting on it." When they had guests, they shut my door. I heard them laugh, toast, tell stories I was not part of. Once, Courtney taped a note to my door. "Please refrain from exiting during dinner. We're cultivating a lighter mood tonight. Thanks, love." I still have that note. I keep it folded in my Bible. They did not want me at their dinner table. They did not want me in their photos. I became the invisible thread in their perfectly curated life. Except, of course, when they needed help, when Courtney had her minor surgeries, or when the baby came and they needed someone to do the 3 a.m. feedings. Then I was a blessing. Otherwise, I was a background shadow. Still, I stayed. Because mothers stay. Because grandmothers forgive. Because I told myself this is what sacrifice looks like in real life. Quiet, constant, and mostly unseen. But then came that message. "Don't come. We already have other plans." I sat there for a long time after reading it, watching the scarf in my lap slowly slip from my fingers, the yarn unraveling, quietly, like something inside me finally gave up. It was not just the words, it was what they meant. Not just that I was unwelcome, but that I was dispensable. An inconvenience, a wrinkle in their holiday aesthetic. I pulled out a photo album from under my bed, the one with pictures of Jeremy at every age, his first steps, his first day of school, his wedding, even his divorce papers, which I had printed out when I helped him file. And at the very back of the album, tucked in an envelope labeled Promises, was a handwritten note from Tom. Peg, it said, this house is built with your hands, your back, your savings. If anyone ever tries to make you feel like a guest in it, remind them who gave them the key. I stared at that note for a long time. And then, I did something I had not done in years. I stood up, walked to the closet, pulled out the safe box, and dialed a number I had not called since Tom's funeral. William, I said, I need your help. It's time. 2 days before Christmas Eve, the house looked like something out of a magazine. Warm lights wrapped around every pillar, candles flickered on every windowsill, and the smell of baked brie and cranberry glaze drifted through the cracks of the walls that I had once helped paint. I was not invited. They called it a rehearsal dinner, but it looked more like a pre-Christmas gala. There were cars lined down the driveway, neighbors, co-workers, Courtney's yoga clients, some man she called her branding advisor. I recognized none of them. From my little room off the kitchen, once a pantry, now a prison, I heard laughter, clinking glasses, the clatter of plates that I had scrubbed clean just hours before. I wrapped myself in my old wool cardigan and stepped quietly onto the back porch. It was cold, but I did not feel it. I held a photo frame close to my chest, my wedding picture, the one where Tom was still young and so was I. He was smiling, looking at me like I was the only thing in the world worth staring at. The windows were steamed from the heat inside, but I found a clear patch and peered in. Jeremy sat at the head of the table laughing. Courtney was beside him, glowing under the soft lighting, holding a glass of something sparkling, her other hand resting on the shoulder of their toddler. And then I heard it. It was not shouted. It was whispered, meant only for the guests nearest to Courtney. But I heard it through the cracked window like it was screamed from the pulpit. She just sits there like a tombstone, Courtney said, eyes rolling toward the hallway I'd exited from earlier that afternoon. That look in her eyes, like someone died and never left. A few people chuckled nervously. Someone murmured, "That's cold." But Courtney continued, "I told Jeremy, if she shows up for Christmas Eve, I'm going back to my mother's. I can't drink eggnog next to the Grim Reaper." Someone else laughed, louder this time. "God, you're awful." "I'm honest," she said. "I mean, come on. She smells like mothballs and sadness. It's like inviting grief to dinner." I stepped back from the window. My knees felt weak, but I held on to the porch railing, steadying myself. My breath fogged up the cold air in front of me, and I looked down at the picture frame. Tom's eyes stared back at me, frozen in time. The door opened behind me. It was Courtney. She stepped out in heels, too high for ice, clutching a thick envelope in one hand and a glass of sparkling wine in the other. She took a dainty sip before holding the envelope out toward me like it was a wedding invitation. "This is for you," she said. "We were going to leave it under your door, but I figured, hey, why not hand deliver?" I took the envelope without speaking. She tilted her head, still smiling that soft, curated smile she used for her followers online. "You deserve your own kind of celebration, you know? Something more, tailored to your vibe." Then she turned and went back inside. I opened it slowly. It was a voucher, a printed certificate with gold trim and cartoon holly on the corners. 3 complimentary days at Whispering Pines Adult Community. Below that, a handwritten note. "You'll find more compatible energy here, Mom. Trust me." There was no "Love, Jeremy." No signature, just those words in Courtney's unmistakable cursive, the kind you learn from too many bullet journals and influencer brand kits. I went back inside, not through the front but through the side door, the one that leads to the laundry room. I did not want to be seen. I walked past the humming dryer, past the half-wrapped presents they never asked me to help with, and into my little back room. I lit a single candle on the table beside my bed. Then I placed the voucher next to Tom's picture, standing it upright like another guest at a funeral. "I got my invitation," I whispered. "Just not to their party." I sat for a while. The house buzzed with life just beyond my walls. Music, laughter, clinking forks and glasses. It sounded like the kind of holiday I used to create for Jeremy when he was little. The tree would be real, not plastic. The gingerbread cookies handmade. The stockings filled with little things that showed I had paid attention. I thought about all those Christmas mornings. How I would sneak downstairs at 5 a.m. to make cinnamon rolls from scratch, just to see his face light up when he smelled them. I thought about that winter, when we could not afford presents, so I turned the living room into a paper snowflake wonderland. He called it the most magical day of his life. I thought about the promise he made. If I ever get my life together, Mama, you'll be the first one I take care of. But I was not first. I was not even last. I was forgotten. An afterthought. A burden to be outsourced. I stared at the voucher again. Whispering Pines. I knew the place. The kind of facility that offers bingo nights and movie screenings and meals without salt. It was fine for someone else. For someone whose life was finished. But I was not finished. I stood up. My legs ached. My back cracked as I straightened. I took off the cardigan and folded it gently. Then I reached into the bottom drawer of my nightstand and pulled out the old address book I had not touched in years. I flipped past names of people who were long gone, dead, moved away, or simply no longer speaking, and then I found it. William G. Larkin Estate. Estate Law. Atlanta 70655553982. Tom had trusted him with our will, with our house, with the small life we had built. William had been his friend for 40 years. He was at the funeral. He held my hand when I could not stand. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. It rang once. Twice. Larkin Law Office, a voice answered. This is Margaret Holloway, I said. Tom's wife. I think it's time we had a talk. William met me the next morning at a little diner, just off the square. One of those places where the coffee comes strong and the waitresses call you sugar without thinking twice. It had been 10 years since I'd last seen him. He looked older, of course, more gray, more deliberate in how he moved, but his eyes hadn't changed. Still that steady blue, still kind. He didn't waste time on small talk. I appreciated that. I read Tom's original deed, he said, flipping open a worn manila folder. Margaret, your name was the sole buyer. The funds used to purchase the house came from your account. Retirement savings, correct? I nodded. 80,000. Every penny I had. And Jeremy's name was added later, strictly for mortgage qualification purposes, not ownership. That's right. William leaned back. Then I have good news. You never relinquished primary ownership. Jeremy has no legal claim to the house. Not now, not ever. I didn't say anything. I just exhaled. It wasn't joy I felt. It was something deeper. Like when you've been carrying a heavy bag for miles and someone finally tells you it's okay to set it down. He continued, You're well within your rights to remove his name from all associated documents. And if you'd like to protect the property going forward, I suggest we place it in a revocable trust. You would retain full control, but no one, not even Jeremy, could contest your wishes. Can we name it after Tom? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. William smiled gently. Of course. So that's what we did. I signed the paperwork that afternoon in his office, the same office where Tom once sat with him, drawing up our will back when Jeremy was still in high school. I remembered Tom's handwriting, blocky, precise, signing next to mine under the clause, The home shall pass into Margaret's hands without dispute upon my death. It already had. Now, it was just about locking the doors behind me. William filed everything with the county. He expedited the paperwork, said it would be finalized within 48 hours. In Georgia, it turns out, when you own the land, the walls, and the mortgage, you own the story too. That night I went home through the side entrance. No one noticed. Courtney was in the living room filming a holiday tablescape tutorial while Jeremy fiddled with the smart thermostat. I walked to the breaker box and rewrote the master access code. I'd kept the manual hidden in a shoebox under my bed, along with spare keys and Tom's dog tags. I reset every digital lock, rewired the Wi-Fi router to a new account in my name, and called the utility companies to request immediate change of service holder, effective midnight. They wouldn't notice right away. That was the point. The next morning I called the locksmith. A nice man named Dwight came by around 10 a.m. He didn't ask many questions when I showed him the title documents. He just nodded and said, "Ma'am, you're the legal owner, that's all I need." He changed every lock, front, back, garage, and the side gate. He handed me 2 sets of keys. "You want me to leave a spare hidden under a pot or something?" he asked. "No," I said, folding the keys into my coat pocket. "I won't be losing these." After he left, I took a slow walk through the house, room by room. I had not done that in a long time, not since they moved in and started changing things, repainting, removing the wallpaper I had chosen with Tom back in 1997. I touched the walls, felt the texture of old plaster beneath my fingertips. It remembered me, even if they didn't. In the kitchen, I found a jar labeled Holiday Savings with a sticky note in Courtney's handwriting. "Ski trip, March." I unscrewed the lid and counted the bills. $462. I didn't take it. I wasn't a thief. But I did leave a note. "The house is no longer your vacation rental. Love, Mom." That afternoon, I sat at the dining room table and wrote a letter. Just a few lines, but I rewrote it 3 times to get the tone right. It wasn't angry, it wasn't cruel, it was final. "Jeremy, this home was built with love, sacrifice, and silence. I gave you everything I had because I believed you'd understand what it meant to belong somewhere. You chose to make me a guest in my own life. Consider this your notice. The lease on my kindness has expired. You have 14 days to make arrangements. After that, you'll need a key, and you won't have one. Mom, I didn't sign it with love. Love wasn't the problem. It never had been." Later that evening, I placed the letter on Jeremy's pillow. I knew he wouldn't find it right away. He and Courtney had taken the baby to a holiday photo shoot across town, complete with rented snow and fake reindeer. Courtney had shown me the outfit the baby would wear, a tiny elf costume, complete with jingling hat. She hadn't asked if I wanted a photo. Before going to bed, I lit a candle for Tom. I whispered, "We've taken the house back, darling." And I slept better than I had in years. Christmas Eve arrived like a performance, not a holiday. Courtney had spent the entire week setting up for their big Facebook live stream. She called it Home Vibes and Holiday Spirit. There were candlelit centerpieces, matching sweaters, choreographed entrances, and even a rented snow machine for the front lawn. From the sidewalk, the house looked like a postcard. Twinkling lights wrapped every railing, holiday jazz played from hidden speakers, and a professionally printed banner hung above the porch, a new family tradition. But the tradition they celebrated no longer had room for the woman who started it all. They had forgotten about me. Or rather, they had erased me. Except I had not gone quietly. I parked 2 houses down, stepped out in my best wool coat, and walked slowly toward the gate. My boots crunched the frost-covered grass. I held a small bag in one hand, inside it a portable projector, a thumb drive, and one single folded sheet of paper. At the gate, I paused. The code panel blinked quietly. They had not changed it yet. Good. I punched in the emergency override I had reset with Dwight. The locksmith 3 days earlier. The lights flickered for half a second. Then, all at once, darkness. The house fell silent. From inside I heard gasps, a few curses, and the unmistakable sound of Courtney's voice in panic. "Who turned off the power? What the— Jeremy, fix it! We're live!" The live stream had cut instantly. The phone mounted on a tripod in the dining room now showed nothing but a frozen screen. I waited 3 beats. Then I opened the front door and stepped inside. The guests were still frozen, blinking in confusion. The baby started crying somewhere near the kitchen. Jeremy turned from the fireplace, his mouth already open, probably to yell at someone. But then he saw me. "Mama?" he said. I did not answer. I walked to the wall, set the projector on the console table, and plugged it into the outlet I had wired to the backup battery earlier that week. It powered up instantly. The room glowed with a pale, flickering light, and then our wedding photo appeared. It was an old picture, slightly faded, but full of life. Tom in his gray suit, me in my lace-trimmed dress, both of us laughing like we had nothing in the world but each other. The room went quiet. The second image appeared, me in the hospital, holding a newborn Jeremy. Then another, Jeremy at 4, on my lap, clapping at a puppet show. Then again, age 10, riding a bike I had saved all year to buy. Finally, the video. A grainy clip from his high school graduation. Jeremy, in a wrinkled cap and gown, stepping up to the podium for his speech. He was 18 then, hopeful, unsure, beautiful. "If there's one person who got me here," he said, voice cracking, "it's my mom. She worked double shifts to buy my books. She gave up everything, even her own comfort, so I could feel secure. When I have a house, I promise, she's the first one who'll live in it." The clip ended, no music, no applause, just silence. I walked to the center of the room. The guests slowly stepped back. Someone whispered, "Is that his mom?" I heard a man mutter, "Oh, hell." Jeremy stared at me like I had risen from the dead. His voice was tight, defensive. What is this?" I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the document. It was neatly folded, notarized, and final. I laid it on the dining table, right where the cranberry glaze was beginning to melt. "I am the sole owner of this house," I said clearly. "Your names are no longer on the deed. Your access codes were changed this morning. The locks? Replaced." Courtney's mouth fell open. "You're joking." I looked at her, then at Jeremy. "You've 14 days to vacate. You'll receive a formal notice by mail. After that, I'll involve the sheriff." "You can't be serious," Jeremy said, stepping forward. "You're doing this? On Christmas Eve?" I didn't blink. "I am doing this because you already had your Christmas without me. I am simply giving you the gift of truth." Someone's phone pinged. The live stream had resumed on battery backup. People across the internet were watching. I saw comments flash on the screen. "Wait, is that his mom? What did they do to deserve that?" I'm sobbing. That woman is a queen. Courtney lunged for the phone, but it slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The feed kept rolling. "You planned this?" Jeremy asked, his voice shaking. "No," I said. "You planned it when you shut my door, when you sent me a voucher for a place where people wait to die, when you erased my name from your family because I made the air too heavy." He opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. "I made the mortgage payments. I paid the taxes. I walked through this house when it was just studs and wires. You made me a ghost in it. Now I've returned to haunt you, not with anger but with paperwork." The projector clicked off. Darkness returned. And then the candlelight flickered back on. The backup battery reconnected to the foyer's circuit. Warm light filled the room again, but it felt different. Honest. Cold, but clean. I turned and walked to the front door. As I stepped out into the crisp night air, I said one last thing, without turning back. 14 days. Use them wisely. I shut the door behind me. It made a sound that did not echo. It ended. By Christmas morning, the internet had taken over. I woke early, out of habit, and brewed a pot of coffee. The house was quiet, emptied of party music, stripped of artificial cheer. Just me, the hum of the refrigerator, and the distant buzz of something larger. I opened my phone and checked Facebook, then TikTok, then Instagram. Notifications were exploding across the screen like fireworks. Who is she? That's his mom? I've never clapped for someone harder. Silent revenge. Legal. Elegant. Brutal. Courtney got served more than turkey last night. She made the house, paid for it, raised the man in it, and they tried to evict her with a spa coupon. The video had been clipped, edited, and reshared in every corner of the internet. People titled it Christmas Justice, Grandma's Silent Power Move, 14 Days of Regret, and the Woman Who Took Her House Back. One version of the clip had reached 3 million views by noon. The hashtags were growing by the minute. Christmas eviction, Mama owns the deed, elder power. I never thought I'd be a hashtag, never thought I'd see myself on a screen again, at least not like this. But there I was, calmly delivering the line, 14 days, use them wisely, as the projector flickered behind me. Someone had even edited a slowed-down version with orchestral music. It was strangely beautiful. The comments were relentless. Not cruel. No, not to me. They were outraged, supportive, fiercely protective. My daughter made me sleep in the garage when her in-laws came. I left. Never looked back. Watching this with my mom. We're both crying. She is the definition of never mistake silence for weakness. And then there were names I recognized. My former student Emily Hastings had posted a long message on Facebook. She tagged me in it, even used my maiden name so people would recognize me. Mrs. Holloway was my fifth-grade teacher when my parents were going through a divorce. I used to come to school hungry, she noticed. She started bringing me extra sandwiches, said they were just extras. But I knew she made them for me. She kept me alive that year. She taught me the value of grace when no one's looking. And now I find out someone made her live in a storage room and handed her a retirement home voucher? That's not justice. That's cruelty. Thousands liked her post. Hundreds commented beneath it. Same here. She let me sit in the library during recess when I didn't have friends. She taught me how to write my first poem. This is the woman who gave us blankets during the winter blackout in 2009. I had not heard from Emily in years. She had gone on to become a lawyer. Last I knew, she was in D.C. I smiled, folded the phone shut for a moment, and let myself breathe. For decades, I had kept my head down, sacrificed without receipt, loved without expectation. It was not bitterness I carried, it was weariness, the kind that comes from being useful until you're not. But now, strangers saw me. They knew my name, my story, and more importantly, they understood the quiet violence of being forgotten. Later that day, a woman knocked on my door. I opened it slowly, unsure. She was in her 60s, wore a red scarf, and held a casserole dish wrapped in foil. "I'm Paula," she said, voice soft. "I live 4 houses down. I saw the clip. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you." And I brought something warm. I let her in. We sat on the couch Jeremy once tried to sell online because it didn't match Courtney's vibe. Paula talked about her own mother, about the loneliness that creeps in after the decorations come down. She said she knew what it felt like to be sidelined. "It's like they think the only thing we're good for is babysitting and dying quietly," she said, sipping her tea. I nodded. "Well, I skipped the babysitting." We laughed, genuinely. For the first time in years, my laughter didn't feel out of place. That evening, the doorbell rang again. And again, women from around the block. Former church friends. 2 retired teachers. A young nurse who recognized me from the video and brought gingerbread. By nightfall, my house was filled with women. Women who had been left behind. Women who had raised children who no longer called. Women who were told, directly or indirectly, that they took up too much space, too much air. We sat around the table. We poured cider. We toasted with store-bought wine. One woman said, "You lit the match, we've all been too scared to strike." Another added, "You made the world see what quiet women carry." Before bed, I checked my phone one last time. A new message had arrived, this one from a local reporter asking for an interview. I ignored it. But I did read one more comment before turning in. She didn't scream. She didn't break things. She used the system. She used the truth. And she won. That's the kind of story I want my daughter to hear. I went to sleep with a warm chest and a quiet mind. I had not planned any of this to go viral. I had not planned to be anything but remembered. But somehow, in doing what was right for myself, I had given voice to so many others who had never been heard. It began with a needle and a ball of yarn. Not the metaphorical kind, real yarn, soft and worn, in the dusty lavender I always favored. I sat on the front porch with it one afternoon, just after the eviction notice had been served and the silence of an empty house settled over me. There was still tension in the walls, like the air had not forgiven the voices it once held, but I could breathe again. Slowly, deeply, I began to knit. At first I only did it because my hands needed something to do. That silence, while earned, can grow heavy too. But by the end of the week, I had a full scarf, and then another. I gave one to Paula, my neighbor with the red scarf and soft casseroles. She cried when I handed it to her. "This is the first gift I've received in years," she said. That night I thought, maybe I'm not the only one who needs something soft to hold, so I made a sign. It was handwritten in blue ink and taped to the inside of the glass door where guests once entered my home to drink Courtney's curated wine. It read, "Come in if you've ever felt left behind. Come in if silence is the only thing that answers you lately. Come in if you want to write again, stitch again, speak again. Margaret." The next day, 2 women showed up. One carried a tote bag full of embroidery. The other brought a diary she had not touched since her husband passed away. We made tea. We sat on the rug. We stitched quietly. And then we talked. And that was the birth of the Quiet Thread. I did not plan to start a center. I just wanted to feel whole. But broken things attract broken things, and before long, the living room that once held Facebook live streams now held women who had not spoken aloud in months. Widows, divorced women, abandoned mothers, a few caretakers who were too tired to ask for care themselves. We met twice a week, then 3 times, then every day. Word spread. Local churches posted about us on their community boards. One woman, a retired nurse, offered to teach grief mapping workshops on Thursdays. Another woman led Letters Never Sent, a guided journaling session to write to those who'd forgotten them. William volunteered to provide free estate consultations for women who feared being erased from their own homes, just as I had been. I turned the old nursery upstairs into a library, filled with books donated by strangers who had seen my story online. I added cozy chairs, soft blankets, a kettle that never went cold. We painted the walls warm green. On the shelf by the window, we placed framed photos of us, not just as mothers, but as girls, young women, brides, teachers, artists, writers, people with names and lives before we became mom or grandma or her. We had found ourselves again, and we stitched each other whole. One Tuesday morning, I stood outside the house with a fresh sign in hand. I pressed it gently onto the glass door, smoothing the tape at each corner. It read, "This house needed new energy. You were right, and now it has it, but it no longer has you." It was for them, Jeremy and Courtney, not to provoke, not even to hurt, but to confirm what had changed. They never came back. Jeremy emailed once, something short, clipped, asking if he could retrieve a box of old records from the garage. I let him. I had them placed outside on the curb. He never rang the bell. Courtney never said a word. I saw she'd deleted her accounts for a while, maybe out of embarrassment, but I had long since stopped watching. My focus was here, with the women who showed up each morning with thermoses and trembling hands, who thanked me like I had given them a gift, when really, they had given me everything. Purpose, peace, a chance to stop being invisible. One of them, Clara, stitched a piece I still keep above the mantel. It says, "She did not scream, she did not shout, she rewrote the ending." One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the front windows and a group of us sat weaving together a massive group quilt, I looked around and realized this house had never felt more alive. It had nothing to do with the lights, nothing to do with the wine or the music or the false smiles of live stream parties. It was the warmth that comes from honesty, the steady, quiet rhythm of women remembering who they are. We called it the Quiet Thread because it felt like that, something soft and unassuming, running through the years, through the pain, holding us together when nothing else could. We made a website. A local journalist wrote a story. Donations came in from across the country, people who had watched that Christmas Eve clip and wanted to be part of something honest. We used the money to buy supplies, to repair the roof, to add ramps for women with walkers and canes. We never charged anyone for anything. The only requirement was this: show up as you are. And they did. Some came crying, some came angry, some came so numb they could barely speak, but over time all of them found a little thread of memory, of joy, of story, and began to stitch again. As for me, I stopped sleeping in the back room. I moved into the master bedroom, the one that used to be mine and Tom's. I opened the curtains again. I filled the closet with soft clothes and took the locks off the door, because I was no longer a shadow in my own home. I was the light. The email came on a Tuesday. Rain had just started tapping the windows, soft and steady like it used to on nights when I'd stay up knitting through my husband's absence. It was nearly dusk when I opened my laptop, not expecting anything in particular. A few updates from the Quiet Thread website, a thank you note from one of the new women who had joined the journaling group, and then there it was. From Jeremy Holloway, subject, "Mom, please." I stared at it for a long while before clicking. There were no attachments, just a photo embedded in the body of the email. My grandson, still in his red and green pajamas, holding a soft stuffed bear. His eyes were wide. He had Tom's nose. And beneath that, a message written in sentences that felt both too late and too empty. "Mom, I know I've made mistakes. I was stupid. I let things get to me. Let Courtney's opinions become mine. But I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to balance everything. The baby, work, the house, I got lost. But I see now, you were right. You always were. I miss you. I miss the way you used to hum in the kitchen, the way you looked at me like I was the best thing that ever happened. I want to come home. We need you. He needs you. Please, Mom. Give me one more chance. Love, Jeremy. I read it twice. And then I sat back, closed my eyes, and listened to the rain. He remembered my humming. That surprised me. I used to hum old hymns while peeling potatoes, folding laundry, or walking from the porch to the mailbox. Nothing dramatic. Just little reminders of peace in a life that rarely offered it. I had not hummed in years. I remembered rocking him when he was sick, pressing cool cloths to his fevered head. I remembered the way he used to climb into bed beside me when Tom was working late, pressing his tiny fingers against my face just to check if I was real. And I remembered that promise, made when he was 18, if I ever have a house, you'll be the first person who lives in it. He did not keep it. Instead, he gave me a windowless room behind the kitchen and a coupon for a place where people wait to be forgotten. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands did not shake. Not anymore. They were stronger now, calloused with purpose. I thought of all the times I excused him. He's tired. He's stressed. She's the one behind it, not him. But the truth is, no one can treat you as less unless they see you that way. He saw me as a burden, and he only remembered me when I took something away. I opened a blank email. I did not reread what he wrote. I did not attach anything. I typed slowly, carefully. Jeremy, you were not influenced. You were revealed. A good man does not need to be reminded to be good. A son who truly sees his mother does not wait until she changes the locks to see her worth. You turned off my light. You made me sit in the dark. You taught my grandson that elders are to be hidden, silenced, erased. Now, you ask to return to that light. But that warmth no longer belongs to you. Learn to live in the dark, as I once did. Mom. I hit send. No love. No sincerely. No door cracked open for negotiation. Just the truth. That night I did not cry. I pulled a new ball of yarn from the basket and began a new scarf. Each loop, each knot, was steadier than the last. I thought of the women who had joined our last circle. One had lost 2 sons to distance, the other to death. One had never had children at all and always wondered if the loneliness was worse for her or for mothers who'd been forgotten. And yet none of them let their grief swallow them whole. We sat together. We created warmth from silence. We stitched our names into something lasting. The house did not echo with grief anymore. It pulsed with memory and choice. Later that week, I printed Jeremy's email. I folded it carefully and placed it in the file I'd begun keeping in my closet, labeled Letters from the Past I Survived. It sat beside hospital bills from when Tom got sick, letters from the school where I was laid off after 22 years, and the original deed to this house. Evidence of love, of endurance, of reclaiming the story. On Sunday, I shared the story with the circle. Not the email itself, but the lesson. One woman, a grandmother of 6, nodded, with tears in her eyes. You taught him something, she said. Not the lesson he wanted, but the one he needed. Another woman added, you can't raise boys forever. At some point, they must choose to be men or not. The group hummed in agreement. And I hummed too. Just softly. A familiar hymn, half melody, half memory. For the first time in years, it rose naturally from my throat. It felt like coming home. To myself. The rocking chair creaked beneath me as I poured a second cup of tea. The porch was still, wrapped in late autumn's hush. Across from me sat Bernice, 76, quick-witted, sharp-tongued, and barely 5 feet tall. Though she spoke like she owned the sky. She had come to the quiet thread 3 weeks ago, after her daughter-in-law told her to stop bringing trauma energy to Sunday dinner. Now we sat here, like we did most Thursdays, knitting, sipping, watching the wind stir leaves across the lawn. Bernice glanced up from her stitching. So tell me something, she said, pausing her fingers. Do you ever feel bad about how it ended? I looked out at the street, let the question breathe for a moment. No, I said simply, because it never really ended. It just changed shape. She smirked. That is such a you answer. I laughed. Then slowly I spoke. I didn't do it to hurt them. I didn't need revenge. I needed air. I needed to feel like my life meant something after they made me feel like a burden. I didn't want them gone because I hated them. I wanted myself back because I loved me. Bernice nodded slowly. I didn't retaliate, I added. I returned the truth to where it belonged. She stopped knitting altogether. That's heavy. It's honest, I said. For years I let silence serve as diplomacy. I thought patience was the same as peace. But patience without respect just turns into erosion, and I was eroding. I reached over and lifted the quilt we'd all worked on. A tapestry of stories, really. Each square sewn by a woman who had sat where we now sat. Names were stitched into the corners. Small phrases, bits of truth. Edith, I gave them my body and they left me my bones. Lupe, I didn't forget. I just waited, Nora. 46 years of Sunday roast and then they changed the locks. And mine, Margaret. When I stood up, they finally looked down. We were not seeking revenge, we were remembering. Bernice said, you know, when my son stopped calling, I told myself he was busy, but even busy people find time for things they value. I wasn't busy, I was invisible. I put my hand on hers. Then you came here, and now you're seen. She smiled, and in her eyes I saw something ancient, the quiet, bitter triumph of a woman who had been cast aside, only to realize her value lay not in their attention, but in her own rediscovery. We sipped in silence. Later that evening, after the porch emptied and the women had gone home with their new journals, scarves, or just a little more light in their eyes, I went upstairs to the old study. I sat by the window where Tom used to read and opened my notebook, the one I kept for letters never sent. I wrote, "We do not need apologies to know we are worthy. We do not need anyone to say, I was wrong, for us to know we were right. Time does not heal, but truth does free. And silence, true silence, is sometimes the longest, loudest sentence one can serve." I closed the book. The house creaked gently, as if in approval. Downstairs, the kettle whistled again. I smiled. Even in stillness, life asks for tending. Before bed, I stood in the front hallway. I looked at the sign on the door one last time. This house needed new energy. You were right. And now, it has it. But it no longer has you. It did not sting. It simply stood as record, a quiet declaration. Years ago, I would have waited by the phone, hoped, worried, wondered if I'd been too harsh. Now I slept with certainty that they were not the ones who defined me, that leaving me behind was not the end of my story, but the beginning of theirs. And in that story, one day, they may come to see the outline of the woman they buried in silence. Not to ask forgiveness, but simply to see clearly for the first time. Maybe, or maybe not. It did not matter, because I remembered. I remembered the girl who married a good man with little money. I remembered the mother who raised a boy alone, who missed meals so he could have his. I remembered the woman who stayed quiet, then the woman who finally said, "No more." The woman who bought the house, the woman who reclaimed it, the woman who turned its walls into a sanctuary for those forgotten. And now, as I sit on this porch, sipping tea with women who used to cry alone in parking lots or write letters no one would read, I do not feel angry. I feel awake. Because there is a kind of justice that doesn't roar. It doesn't burn. It simply stands. And when an old woman finally stands, everyone bows their heads. Thank you, dear listener, for walking with me through this story not just of loss, but of quiet reclamation. If this tale touched a memory in your chest or reminded you of a voice that was once silenced, know this: you are not alone. There are millions of stories like mine. Stories that begin with silence, but don't have to end there. If you'd like to hear more true stories from the women the world tried to forget, stories of strength, of stillness, of long overdue justice, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Because revenge doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with a rocking chair and the deed in your name. I'll be right here, waiting on the porch, ready to tell the next one.